The storm did not feel normal. Snow flew sideways through the dark, driven by sharp wind that cut into the skin like blades. The cold was not just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. It filled the air, pressed into the ground, and seemed to hunt anything left outside. The town had gone quiet. Doors were shut tight, windows were covered, lights were turned low or blown out. Families stayed close to their fires, listening to the wind scream past their walls. Even the streets looked empty, buried under fresh snow. This was the kind of night where stepping outside meant risking your life. The kind of night where mistakes did not get a second chance. And yet, through the white blur of snow and shadow, a single shape moved forward. A man walked against the wind, head down, shoulders bent, pushing one slow step at a time. No one watched him. No one called out. The storm tried to swallow him whole, but he kept going, alone in the open, when everyone else knew better than to be there. The man had no home to return to when the storm came. He slept where he could, near old buildings or empty land, places most people walked past without looking. His coat was too thin for weather like this, the fabric torn in places and stiff from old wear. His boots had once been made for a soldier, strong long ago, but now cracked and leaking cold with every step. His face showed the weight of years that had been hard and unkind. He did not curse the storm or beg for help. He simply kept walking, as if he had learned long ago that the world would not stop for him. Few in town knew his name, and fewer still cared to ask. He had fought in battles that were over and forgotten, and now he carried only what he could hold. No food, no money, just a rolled blanket under his arm. The last thing he owned that still offered a bit of warmth. The wind roared so loud it drowned out almost everything. Snow hit his face and filled his ears, making the world feel empty and loud at the same time. Then something broke through the noise. It was faint, weak, and wrong. He slowed, then stopped. The cold rushed in at once, biting harder now that he was still. He listened again. There it was. Not the wind, not the creak of wood or the snap of ice. It was a sound that shook and trembled, thin and scared. He turned his head, trying to find where it came from. Every part of him knew he should keep moving. Standing still in this storm was dangerous, but his feet would not listen. He had heard that sound before, in moments when something was close to giving up. Whatever was out there was alive, and it was calling, whether it meant to or not. He followed the sound, step by step, moving slowly through the thick snow. Shapes began to form in the dark. A broken fence, a leaning post. Then he saw her. A horse stood tied in the open, alone in the storm. Snow covered her back and neck, packed hard like ice. Her legs shook so badly they looked ready to fold under her weight. The rope around her neck was pulled tight, digging into her skin, leaving red marks that the cold had already started to darken. Her ears were stiff, the tips pale and numb from the freezing air. When she noticed him, she lifted her head just a little, then dropped it again. She did not pull away. She did not try to run. She was too tired for that. Her breath came out in short, weak clouds. He stepped closer and placed a hand against her side. The cold of her body shocked him more than the wind. This was not just suffering. This was the edge of the end. He felt it in his chest, the quiet knowing that time was almost gone. He looked down at what he carried under his arm. The blanket was old, rough, and worn thin in places, but it was all he had left. It had kept him alive through nights like this. Without it, the cold would reach him fast and deep. He understood that without thinking it through. Still, he did not hesitate. He did not argue with himself or look away. He unrolled the blanket with stiff fingers and lifted it up, careful not to startle her. The wind tried to tear it from his hands as he draped it over her back and shoulders. The cloth settled against her frozen coat, and her shaking slowed just a little. He adjusted it again, making sure her chest was covered. The cold hit him harder at once, sinking into his bones. He felt it, but he did not pull back. Some choices did not need words. He worked the rope loose with hands that barely felt the knots. When it finally gave way, he took hold of it and spoke softly, guiding her instead of pulling. She tried to step forward and nearly collapsed. He moved in close at once, pressing his shoulder against her side to keep her upright. Her weight leaned into him, heavy and unsteady. Together they took another step, then another. The storm pushed at them from every direction, filling their tracks as soon as they were made. More than once his foot slipped on hidden ice, and more than once her legs buckled without warning. Each time they stopped, breathing hard, then moved again. The cold burned now, sharp and deep, but he stayed close, holding her steady. Through the blowing snow, a dark shape slowly appeared ahead. 4 walls? A roof? just a shadow at first, then clearer with each step. He focused on it one step at a time, as if looking anywhere else might make it disappear. Neither of them could make it alone. Together was the only way forward. They reached the building just as the wind screamed past the doorway. Inside, the noise dropped, leaving a heavy, cold quiet behind. Snow still crept in through cracks in the walls, and the air bit just as hard. But at least the storm could not reach them directly. He led her to one side and let her rest while he searched the dark space. Broken boards lay scattered across the floor. Old crates dry enough to burn. He dragged what he could into a small pile, his movement slow and stiff. His fingers barely worked. When he struck the flint, the spark died at once. He tried again. Nothing. His breath shook as much as his hands. On the third try, a tiny flame caught, weak but real. He shielded it with his body until it grew. Warmth began to spread little by little. The horse shifted closer, her shaking easing as the heat reached her. It was not safety yet, but it was enough to keep hope alive. He knelt beside her and rubbed her neck and legs, slow and steady, trying to bring the feeling back. The fire cracked softly behind them, the sound small but comforting. Steam lifted from her coat where the ice began to melt. After a while, she shifted her weight and stepped closer, pressing her side against him. The warmth surprised him. He leaned into it without thinking, resting his head against her shoulder. For a moment, neither of them moved. There was no wind here, no shouting storm, only breath and quiet. His body finally loosened, the tightness easing from his chest. He stayed there, eyes half closed, letting the heat sink in. Exhaustion came gently, not like collapse, but like sleep that had been waiting a long time to be allowed. Light crept in through the broken windows, pale and quiet. The wind was gone. The storm had passed. He stirred as feeling slowly returned to his hands and feet, sharp and painful at first, then steady. When he pushed himself up, the horse was standing. Not strong, not steady, but on her feet. Her eyes looked clearer now, more aware. He let out a slow breath he did not know he was holding. Outside, the snow lay smooth and untouched. The world calm in a way that felt unreal after the night before. Then he noticed the marks near the doorway. Footprints. Fresh ones. They led toward the shelter and away again. Someone had come during the storm. Someone had seen this place and walked away. The quiet suddenly felt different. The danger had not ended. It had only changed shape. They moved slowly back toward town, cutting a narrow path through the deep snow. The horse stayed close to him, her steps careful but steady. As they entered the street, doors opened a crack. Faces appeared at windows. People stopped what they were doing to stare. A man who slept outdoors was not meant to walk out of a storm leading a living horse. Near the center of town, the sheriff stepped forward, shovel still in hand. Her eyes moved from the man to the rope in his grip, then to the marks on the horse's neck. Before she could speak, a voice cut through the cold air. A heavy man pushed from the crowd, his face red with anger. He pointed and shouted that the horse belonged to him. He said the drifter had taken what was not his. Murmurs spread fast. The man felt every eye turned toward him. He said nothing. The horse pressed closer to his side, and the street felt colder than the storm ever had. The sheriff did not rush to speak. She studied the rope burns, the stiff way the horse stood, the fear still sitting in her eyes. Then she turned back toward the crowd. A search was made. The place where the horse had been tied was checked. Cut rope was found fresh and clean. A small record book turned up. Names and notes written without care. The horse listed as something meant to be thrown away when she was no longer useful. The man who claimed her shifted and shouted, but his words no longer carried weight. People stepped back from him. The truth sat plain in the open, easy to see. The sheriff's voice was firm when she spoke. The horse had been left to die. That was clear enough. She placed a hand on the rope and said the animal would stay where she was, safe. No one argued. Some things did not need long explanations. As days passed, the horse grew stronger. Color returned to her coat, and her steps no longer shook with fear. The man stayed close, helping where he could, fixing small things around town in exchange for a meal or a warm place to sleep. People began to greet him instead of looking past him. They asked his name. They trusted him with work. For the first time in a long while, he did not feel like he needed to keep moving just to survive. The horse followed him everywhere, calm and steady, as if she knew where she belonged now. He no longer slept in empty places. He no longer walked without a reason. What began as a single night in a storm slowly turned into something that felt like a future. Even after winter eased its grip, the memory of that night stayed. When the wind picked up and snow brushed the ground, some remembered the storm that nearly took 2 lives. A man walking when no one else would, a horse left behind still breathing. One small choice, made without noise or praise, changed both their paths. When people saw them later, moving forward side by side, they understood that not every rescue is loud. Some begin in silence in the cold, when someone chooses not to walk away.